Another edition of Beat the Closing Number presented by TheLines.com. You can follow us on X, Twitter, whatever Elon Musk wants to call it these days, at The Lines US. You can follow myself at Eli Herskovich, and you can follow Mo Nuwwarah with 2 W's. Mo, we are 31-16 here on Beat the Closing Number with NFL spreads and totals this season. 2-2 in week 14, or week 13, so looking to get back in the green, but still has been a great season for us. And before we get into it, remember to give the video a thumbs up and ring the bell to get notifications whenever The Lines releases a new sports betting video on any market. We have college football bowl game previews going up with great Kelly Ford and Brett Gibbons, so be sure to check those out. NBA as well, college hoops with me. We'll have some more videos in the near future, but you could also get all of our bets in real time by subscribing in the roll section on our Discord channel. The link is over at thelines.com. Mo, I don't think you've placed any bets, or at least posted any bets. Maybe you put one of the games that we're going to discuss at the top end earlier in the week, but still a bunch to break down. We also have Doug Kezirian joining us, former Daily Wager host and now with onlyplayers.com and one of the best sports betting analysts out there, later to come on this edition of Beat the Closing Number. But Mo, I think you're still up in Wisconsin trying to get over that Chiefs loss from Sunday night, right?
Definitely not. Man, you should see the locals around here. They think they won the Super Bowl. It's a sad state of things what the franchise has come to. Winning a December home game, people are walking around busting my balls, asking me, tough game the other day, huh? Just biggest grins on their faces. We'll see who's playing in January, guys. Relax.
RELAX, channeling your inner Rodgers there, for Aaron Rodgers.
You would think they would, of all people, would know.
Yeah, that's true. Clearly not. We'll get back to the Packers. We'll touch on one of the 2 Monday Night Football games with the Packers and Giants in a bit. But if you want to get any promo codes for your NFL Week 14 bets, BetMGM Sportsbook is the place to go. Use promo code TheLines, one word, to get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets. If your first bet loses, that's promo code TheLines, one word again. And remember that bonus bets are not equivalent to real money. If your first bet loses, or if it cashes, of course, that bonus bet will not be applied to your account if it does cash. But in the case that it loses, you will get that bonus bet equivalent to up to $1,500 back. And remember that terms and conditions apply as always. So, Mo, kicking it off with an AFC team that is in the hunt for the number 1 overall seed, just like your Kansas City Chiefs, even though they fell officially a game back after that Packers loss. But Baltimore sitting as a touchdown favorite against the Rams on early Sunday afternoon. This has dipped since the opener initially was released at 7.5, but it quickly bumped down to a flat touchdown. Total of around 43. How are you betting this game?
Yeah, some tug of war back and forth on this line. Seems like there's sharps that like 7.5, and there's sharps that are maybe willing to take the -7 because it's kind of bouncing around. But yeah, I still like the Rams. I unfortunately did take 7, but it was a cheap 7. Like I think it was like -105, so I feel fine about it. The total in this game, it has seen a ton of movement though. Dropping like a stone. I think it's down like 3 points, down close to 40 now. I think that's mostly due to the weather. It looks like heavy rain is what's coming, with some potentially high winds, at least medium winds, and could be some bigger gusts and stuff like that. But yeah, it looks like quite a bit of rain. I think like 90% chance of rain or something. Could be a downpour here. Obviously, once the total starts to compress like this, it's probably a good thing for the underdog, even if stylistically speaking, it might help the Ravens a little more since they have been a more effective rushing team at times. Although, the Rams, since getting Kyron Williams back, their offense seems to be clicking in basically all phases, and that includes the run. I mean, they obviously have faced some vulnerable defenses, but not the Browns, and they're still moving the rock at will on the Browns. A lot probably depends on the health of their pass catchers here. I think everyone's pretty banged up out of their top 3, I guess I would say, which is like Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, and maybe Tyler Higbee. I don't know. That third person has kind of been, Tutu Atwell at times, but all those guys are maybe less than 100%, which worries me a little bit. But like I talked about when we initially discussed this game, you have a defense that kind of actually struggles to create pressure, down in the 20s in pressure rate, I think, with the Ravens. So that's my biggest thing I'm looking for when I'm looking at the team that's facing the Rams. How effective can they be rushing the passer? Matt Stafford is pretty bad now if he has to do anything on the move. And overall, I would say this is a spot where I'm honestly most fearful of just like the general spot for the Rams, because it is a long travel across the country and they are facing the Ravens off the bye. If this were to dip below 7, I would lose some interest in it. But I still think it's good at 7.5, obviously. Kind of depends on what you want to do, which number you want to take. Like, if you can get a cheap 7, it might honestly be fine, like better in some ways than paying some extra juice for the hook in a game where shouldn't be a lot of scoring, and there could be some Ravens walkovers if their pass rush is winning and getting to Matt Stafford. So I probably wouldn't want to pay juice if I can help it. So just maybe hope the 7 is good enough. And yeah, I do like the Rams though. It's just too high of a line for me, I think.
Yeah, you mentioned the total going down to around 40. I mentioned that opener, or slight opener, I guess, was initially 43.5, then maybe 43 Sunday night, early Monday morning, and then took a major slide, as you mentioned. But kind of some things going in your favor. You mentioned the Rams' efficient ground game with Williams back ever since the Cardinals game a couple weeks ago, I think. But Rams actually rank 5th in EPA per play since getting Stafford back from that thumb injury over the last 3 weeks. Now, obviously, weather conditions have been on their side, and bad weather may not favor, or probably doesn't favor, Stafford, especially going up against arguably the best defense in the NFL. But like you said, they were able to run on a pretty good Browns run defense, even though the home road splits for Cleveland are pretty stark. Now, on the flip side, you mentioned Baltimore coming off the bye. Come Sunday, they will have played one game in their last 24 days. And then we brought this up on the Monday episode of Beat the Closing Number. Rams going cross country. So clear rest advantage for the Ravens, on top of the fact that they have the bye, which plays into just playing one game, the Chargers game, over their last 24 days once Sunday rolls around. Now, the Mark Andrews injury, I am kind of curious how that impacts this Ravens offense in the long term. It may have just been a one-game blimp, but Lamar Jackson had his third sub 60% completion percentage against LA a couple weeks ago, and that was coming off of Andrews undergoing the ankle surgery, and he could potentially be out for the rest of the regular season. We'll see if he winds up coming back if the Ravens make a deeper run of the playoffs. But a couple of glaring concerns for Baltimore, potential concerns, if that inefficiency remains an issue for Jackson, and then if this Rams offense can keep this up in poor conditions. I would probably trend on the opposite side of that we will see some offensive aggression, especially against this defense at home with all the rest they've gotten. But still, a couple things on your side there.
Yeah, I think the Mark Andrews injury obviously is going to be pretty big. I mean, you got a passing game that's pretty light in general on weapons, I think. And even though I do like what I've seen from Zay Flowers, but especially in the red zone, that's where Mark Andrews definitely does his best work. And I think definitely in a game where, not a lot of points are going to be expected, getting that 7 instead of that 3 is massive. So hoping, that maybe the Rams can hold to some field goals, put together a couple decent drives, and just squeak out a grindy cover where, would it even surprise me if the Rams won? Not really. I mean, they're really do seem to be clicking and playing their best football. I really like the way Sean McVay's been calling these games. And then you have a Ravens team that I think hasn't played quite as well as its record for a lot of the season, faced a lot of backup quarterbacks, stuff like that. So happy to have the Rams in this spot. But at the same time, would I be stunned if the final score was like 24-10 here? Not really.
I'm going to be rooting for Baltimore. I have those Ravens futures. countering your last point, I will say the DVOA stuff numbers are adjusted for the opponent. So Baltimore still top of the rankings in that metric at least, but not that DVOA is the end all be all.
And also on that point, you got to remember, like, if you face backup quarterbacks, they're crediting you for facing the full team. So they do make adjustments for that in their forward-looking projections, but not in their ladder-looking scoring stuff. Like, they're going to get full credit for beating the Browns 28-3 or whatever that game was, when that was DTR, who was just completely beyond clueless at that point.
Mo will forever hate the Ravens, and probably me. Every year I bet them, which will probably happen next year if they don't do anything in the playoffs. But on to another bad weather game. This is going to be pretty brutal for one particular quarterback, with the Lions now sitting at a juice 3, so favored at a field goal. There are some 3.5s with the Bears juiced at plus 3.5. It's down from 5, which I think was the number when the spread opened up on Sunday night. Total has continued to plummet, similar to the Rams and Ravens game. And the Lions covered against the Saints last week, and I bet the Bears at plus 3.5 on Monday. I would still play it at the juice number above the key number of 3, even at minus 120, laying a buck 120 to win a single unit, depending on, again, how much you're putting at stake on your individual NFL bets. But the Lions won their first matchup against the Bears in Week 11, outgaining the Bears in yards per play. But needing 2 touchdowns in the final 3 minutes, maybe 3+ minutes, because I think they scored just under the 3-minute mark. That first touchdown kind of aids them in that yards per play category. The Bears, they were getting, I think they were plus in the turnover differential department, but still, they were outgaining the Lions for much of that game and controlling the clock as well. But you look at Jared Goff in outdoor weather, which is what I was alluding to from the get-go. Nearly 2/3 of his career interceptions and fumbles have come outdoors. We're going to see snow, rain, and 21-mile-per-hour winds at Soldier Field on the lakefront in Chicago. And he's also going up against a Bears defense that is allowing a bottom 10 EPA per carry and rushing success rate since getting Montez Sweat from the Commanders in Week 9, ahead of that Week 9 game against the Saints. Not that they weren't starting to play well the week before in Week 8, but this is a Bears defense that it may sound cliche, but is starting to round into form with the personnel they have, despite the fact that they still have poor coaching with Matt Eberflus, who is a defensive guy first. And on that note, I think it is going to be tougher for the Lions to run the ball against this kind of upper echelon Bears defense, at least over the last month or so, especially if Frank Ragnow, the Lions center, is out. I think he's missed practice at least on Wednesday, if not the last couple of days, as we're recording this on Thursday afternoon. And on the other side of the ball, the Lions rank number 30 now in dropback success rate allowed. Maybe the weather affects Justin Fields just as it should affect Jared Goff, but Lions have also struggled with mobile quarterbacks, as we saw in the Dome against Fields in his first game back, coming off of that finger injury. So I expect the Bears offense to continue their success that we saw the first time these two teams linked up, and then I think their defense plays well in poor conditions against a quarterback that, I hate to say you can rely on trends, but Goff's numbers in bad weather, I think, hold true yet again against the Bears. So how are you betting, or at least looking at this game, Mo?
I like the under quite a bit, actually. I mean, you say the total's been on the move, but has it? Because we're still looking at a pretty, I would say, medium level total by nowadays standards, which kind of stuns me with the conditions and like what you talked about with Jared Goff, I think is legitimate, and you definitely are more inclined to say that when you look at kind of where he's from. He played his college football in California. Then he comes in, he has a home stadium indoors for his whole NFL career, basically. So I think that's definitely something I'm more inclined to believe in when we see something like that. Yeah, like you said, windy, should be a ground-bound battle here, man. I mean, both teams in the bottom 6 in pass rate over expectation here. So we all know the Lions want to pound the rock, and the Bears have had some success with how good their offensive line has been playing. Jared Goff outdoors, I'm curious to see what they do here, because it did really seem like the Lions, the Bears had a good game plan for him before. Like, they had guys standing in the throwing lanes he was wanting to hit. So it's going to be on Detroit's offensive coaching staff to make some adjustments here. And I think one of the adjustments they can make is more running the ball, because even like in the 2-minute drill in that last game against the Bears, dude, they were pounding the rock and it was working. I mean, they had 5.2 yards per attempt in that game. It was like so weird to watch. They were in a hurry up but handing off, but it was getting chunks of yards. So I also question whether Justin Fields can take advantage of this secondary, as some other quarterbacks have been, particularly in the conditions. So definitely with a total that is not as low as some of those we've seen, especially in games like this, I'm definitely interested in under 43.5 here.
Yeah, definitely. I knew you made the case for Detroit being able to run the ball. I think the Bears defense and their metrics hold up here, but I think the Bears also, if you're looking maybe at a Chicago under same game parlay or something like that, not that I'm betting that, not that Mo's betting that, because I don't necessarily think you like the Bears correlated with that side of the total, but I think it either way here, whether you like Detroit or Chicago, like you said, the script plays towards both teams trying to run the ball, whether they're efficient or not, and it plays to a lower scoring game as a result with the pace. So definitely agree with you on that look for the total. But on to another divisional game, Falcons and Bucks. I think you may be on the opposite side of me here yet again. So our 2-week or so run looking at the same side definitely has come to an end. But I'm looking towards the Falcons. I bet the Falcons on Wednesday. And you can find that bet in our Discord channel. Again, the link is over at thelines.com at the top right-hand corner. I played Falcons -1.5. It's down from 2.5, which is where it opened at. Maybe some soft threes initially on Sunday, but pretty much 2.5s on Monday. And we're down a full point. The injury report definitely plays to that, with the Falcons being extremely banged up. I know Drew Dahlman, their center, was back at practice on Thursday, but Jeff Okudah, their linebacker, Nate Landman, of course, Okudah being a cornerback, hasn't necessarily performed the greatest, but still one of their starting outside corners. And their other offensive linemen, other than their center, who I mentioned, back in practice this week, or on Thursday, but McGarry, and also David Onyemata, who's now their best defensive lineman when it comes to pressuring the quarterback without Grady Jarrett, who's now out for the season, I believe. So all of those guys, those 4 players, missing practice on Thursday. And then A.J. Terrell was practicing yet again in a yellow non-contact jersey. He's trying to come back from that concussion. But the fact that he has been practicing in a limited fashion, I think at least he'll have a shot to play in this game. But, when you look at the quarterbacks with Mayfield and Ritter, I know it's easy to say that it's Mayfield makes for the better bet in this game, but Ritter still ranks around league average in success rate, and that kind of correlates to having a positive game script. So if they're able to run the ball, and you also factor in 2 of his worst games of the year over the last couple of weeks, came against the Jets and Saints, and that was also when the Saints had a healthier defense. And then you look at this Bucs defense, which ranks top 7, or allowing the top 7th, allowing a top 7 success rate, also EPA per play since week 8. Red zone defense also should be due for some regression, as they rank number 29 in touchdown percentage allowed inside the 20-yard line. So they haven't allowed many touchdowns, of course, in the red zone. That's what that stat insinuates. But I think the Falcons could be due for some positive regression in that category, as they haven't been great inside the red zone. And on top of that, looking at that stat in particular, the Falcons had 3 red zone turnovers in that last meeting against the Bucs, I believe, in week 7. So potential red zone regression, not only overall for Tampa defensively, but also when you look at that first matchup when the Falcons turned the ball over 3 times in the red zone. And maybe the Bucs and Baker Mayfield get a little bit of red zone turnover luck, positive variance on their own end, especially if Terrell and Okudah, neither of the Falcons starting cornerbacks, suit up. But I think this offense has been a little bit overrated when it comes to their power rating, just how you look at Tampa Bay overall, because as I mentioned with Philly before the 49ers game last week, they got a lot of breaks when it came to recovering their own fumbles, and Tampa Bay is, in the same respect, has gotten their fair share of positive variance, recovering just over 58% of their own fumbles, which is tied for the 9th highest clip in the NFL with the Cardinals. So I like Atlanta's offense to bounce back after a subpar performance against the Jets, and that Jets run defense is one of the better run defenses in the NFL. So if you can maintain that positive game script, like I mentioned for the get-go for Ritter, I don't know if that turnover rate necessarily comes to fruition unless the Falcons get unlucky with fumbles. But what say you here for Falcons Bucks, Mel?
Well, I really hope, I shouldn't say this because I don't want to anti-sweat you, but I really hope that for my season bet, the Bucks do manage to pull off the W here, because I did bet the Saints a few weeks back. As far as this matchup goes, yeah, like you said, much higher opener, maybe as high as 3 in some spots. Market definitely in on the Bucks so far. It's been dropping all week. You've got some critical injuries on both sides. You mentioned several of them. I think maybe the biggest one could be Vita Vea. He missed practice on Wednesday, and just absolutely a monster in the middle, helps, especially when you're facing a team like the Falcons that really wants to come in, hammer the ball up the middle, and, they're going to need their run defense to be on point, obviously. So this, to me, is just kind of two evenly matched teams in what is definitely the biggest game of the season to date for both sides. Maybe you could say Saints-Falcons, but yeah, the Bucs season is pretty much over if they lose this game, so this is obviously a massive one for them. Would have been interested in the Bucs around 3. Now, I think just staying away. As far as the matchup goes, you do have Desmond Ridder playing against very blitz-heavy team in this spot. The Bucs with Todd Bowles are going to bring a lot of blitzes. His PFF grading has been better when he's been blitzed, which I think is interesting because he does kind of, I think, tend to turtle up in some spots when he's under pressure, but maybe that just means his offensive line is doing a great job picking up these blitzes. I mean, they do have one of the better pass blocking grades, so that matchup could be one to watch, especially when you have a guy like Devin White, who also is banged up and missing practice, who knows if he's going to play. Because of his speed, he can be an effective blitzer at times. So, yeah, just going to hope for the best for my future here, and just thinking probably this is a pretty fair market, although a lot of the stuff you're saying is making me wonder if, honestly, over 41 could be a play here. Just you have indoor and a Bucs team that has moved the ball well in a lot of spots through the air, but you want to talk about regression. I mean, these guys can't catch the ball. So if anybody ever catches the ball for Baker, I mean, maybe they're moving the rock here. And we have seen the Falcons. I mean, this same matchup, they were moving the ball pretty much at will last time these two teams played. It wasn't a good game from the Tampa Bay defense. I think the Falcons were definitely the better team in that game. That was a well-deserved W for them. So, yeah, maybe we do see some points in this matchup, more so than the line would indicate.
Yeah, the total's been bet up from around 39.5 too. So you're not necessarily getting the best of the number, but both defenses, especially when it comes to their red zone defense, due for some negative variance. I hope it's more so for Atlanta's sake, but over would seem like a play if you're okay with not getting around what it opened at, which I think was around 39.5. But we'll see how their injury reports shake out as well over the rest of the week. That would be big if Vita Vea does miss this matchup, because this Bucs defensive front is very vulnerable, and I think that would also insinuate that the Falcons' run game does bounce back, like I think comes to fruition after what they did against the Jets, really struggling, and even going back to that first matchup against the Bucs, really struggling on the ground when that Bucs defensive front was healthier. But on to the final matchup that we're going to handicap, Mo, looking at Packers and Giants. This point spread sitting around where it opened at, which is Packers minus 6.5. There are some juiced Packers minus 6.5 point spreads starting to pop up. Pretty much all minus 110 both ways. A total that under 40, which is very on par with the rest of the market, with the rest of these games this week, maybe outside of a couple on the East Coast. But how are you handicapping this one? Maybe you're looking to get some revenge here, despite you betting the Packers, you being a Chiefs fan, not enjoying the outright result on Sunday night.
Dude, nobody's been riding the Packers more than me. I think I've hit them all three of their last few wins. So been very above market on the Packers, definitely for the past month or so. At the same time, that's kind of what's leading me into thinking this is a tricky spot for them. I mean, they're coming in riding high, 3 straight W's, quality W's too, and now facing a bad team on the road, which is like 2 big red flags for a potential for a flat spot, and then you add in how high they're riding right now, and facing a Giants team that, man, nobody is more talking about how bad Tommy DeVito is than me, but they have had 2 weeks to prep for this, and even getting some extra time with this being a Monday nighter, so I'm kind of trying to hit the spot here and take the dog money on the Giants. I was really disappointed in the way the Chiefs approached that game defensively, to be honest with you. Just expected a way better game plan. It felt like they went in with the most vanilla approach ever. It did not seem like they were very interested in bringing pressure, blitzing Jordan Love, a quarterback who has been pretty poor at times when you can get in his face, but it didn't really seem like the Chiefs really brought that many blitzes aside from that big 4th and 1 conversion, which, if you're forcing guys to throw, I'm not going to say Hail Mary because it was a good throw, but basically a moon ball into practically triple coverage, that's a result you can live with if they're going to complete those. And they just didn't really want to do that very much, it seemed like. So, obviously the Chiefs better defense, more talented defense than what the Giants are running out there, but only the Vikings blitz more than the Giants. I know they're going to try to come after Love. So I think that probably helps them in this spot. And an injury that could affect Green Bay as well with Christian Watson going down. I don't believe he's going to be able to play this week. And especially with the way Green Bay's been playing offense, I mean, every time I've been watching them, they're getting a lot of mileage out of these deep drops with Jordan Love, offensive line building a wall, and then he's got time to look downfield, and you see it in his ADOT. 9 ADOT, that's, I think, 3rd highest in the NFL. So they're getting a lot of mileage out of their deep passing game. I think the Vikings are gonna, or the Giants are gonna make them play a little bit different here, and add in, another game with bad weather, 15-mile-an-hour winds, raining all day in New York. So I think the total obviously reflects that. You see a 36.5 there. I think I'm gonna take the dog money. This is an Eli special. I would assume you're with me on this one since, the uglier the team, usually the happier you are. Doesn't get much uglier than Tommy DeVito here. You do have the Giants, too, running the ball well at times. I know the numbers are pretty rough, what they are, but, man, Green Bay's run defense is pretty bad. I mean, the Chiefs have not exactly overpowered a lot of teams. Isaiah Pacheco and the offensive line, there was holes. They were really killing Green Bay in that sense, and this is overall a mediocre to weak run defense. They rank, bottom 10 in EPA. Maybe the potential for some big plays here and there, although I won't hold my breath there in the passing game with Jalen Hyatt. He has been helping out Tommy DeVito and providing a little bit of juice that they really, really lacked in that department. Nobody winning downfield, nobody making big plays in the passing game. So, I mean, the sacks that DeVito is taking are terrifying. So they are going to have to hopefully iron that out at least a little bit. But yeah, I'm gonna swallow hard and take the dog money here.
I think your handicap is spot on. I haven't pulled the trigger on Giants, but you mentioned the Giants being able to run the ball. It's kind of to the similar point if the Bears are able to do so against the Lions as a dog, catching over a key number, or Giants are getting 6. But in today's NFL with 2-point conversions, it's still a big number regardless of whether it's a key number or not. And offensive line is also getting healthier. I know the Giants rank bottom 3 when it comes to run block win rate, but assuming Evan Neal is back at right tackle, the offensive line is the healthiest it's been, with Andrew Thomas also at left tackle in a long time, especially when you go back to that Bills game on Sunday Night Football, which they're somehow able to remain competitive in. And like you said, this Packers run defense is vulnerable. They were playing a bit better with Devondre Campbell back in the lineup outside of that Chiefs game last Sunday night. But if the Giants can maintain that positive game script, shortening the clock, a total around 37, it definitely plays to the home underdog. The only thing I worry about is turnover variance kind of swinging the other way for the Giants. You know, you go back to that matchup 2 weeks before the bye, the getting +6, I think, in the turnover differential department against the Commanders, and then finishing with a plus turnover differential against the Patriots as well. But you also wonder if, I think you brought this up, if the Packers come out flat in this spot or not. And also, they should seemingly get some offensive regression, whether you like the Giants' defense or not either. And this secondary is horrendous, especially with the step back that Adoree Jackson has taken this year. But the amount of scoring possessions they had against the Chiefs last week, we have to see some semblance of negative variance go their way, and it may come from the get-go if they come out a bit flat. So I'm with you, man. If I do wind up betting this game, it's probably going to be on New York.
Yeah, and we've seen some underdogs come out and grab leads, and at that point, especially when you have a situation where it's going to be hard to pass downfield in the conditions and whatnot, the Giants would be in a really good spot if they can ambush Green Bay a little bit. So just hoping the spot does help them out here, which I really think it should. I mean, you know that stuff like a bye and whatnot is generally going to be accounted for in the line, but just specifically here with even extra time, like I said, and a Green Bay team that is just absolutely peaking, and the market's finally given them some respect here after multiple weeks of just not believing whatsoever. So maybe it is time to sell them. I'm hoping it is.
Yeah, and you mentioned getting pressure on Love. I know the Packers offensive line is playing better, which is a point that we brought up last week, handicapping Chiefs Packers, but Wink Martindale, known for his blitz packages, and the Giants have the 11th ranked pass rush win rate, potentially getting Dexter Lawrence back, their nose tackle, this week. So coming off the bye on both sides of the ball in the trenches, the Giants could be getting healthier, which is big. So that's going to do it for this half of the Beat the Closing Number podcast, as Mo and I handicap our 4 favorite bets, looking at the Rams, Bears, Falcons, and Giants. Now it's time to be joined by the great Doug Kezirian. You can follow him on X, Twitter, whatever Elon Musk wants to call it these days, at Doug Kezirian, the founder of OnlyPlayers.com. Doug, I hear it all the time, and I see it all the time on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. Why isn't Doug on Daily Wager anymore? Where is Doug at these days? So fill the people in, man.
So I I appreciate those questions. You know, it's funny. I still get asked, like, what are you up to these days? I'm like, really? Because I feel like I tweet too much. I just, it's not in my DNA to just over communicate what I'm doing. It's more about commenting on what's going on in the betting world or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty common for someone to do a couple decades of the corporate life and then go do sort of the startup venture, right? You glean as much as you can along the way. You meet certain people that you want to kind of go do your own thing. Frankly, I have 3 brothers who have all gone sort of the entrepreneurial route and do their own, and they're all older too. So they've all done it before me. And, you know, the landscape, as you guys know, is different now, but it's still early. It's 5.5 years in. And I'm of the belief that it has gone down a certain path. So it kind of like started, and then it's gone down a path where it's more like, at least the common, not necessarily your guys' situation, but it's more just like everyone's giving out their favorite lottery numbers. And there's really sort of, and this goes for the operators, the gaming operators and everyone else. It's not approached in a way where it's like, hey, like this is like a stock channel, finance channel, right? Like MSNBC or Fox Business. It's more going sort of the casual, fun, screwy way. And I just think there's a way to do it where you can simulate the day-to-day existence of a sports bettor and actually have information that people want. Now, there's different ways of packaging that information instead of just making it a sidebar. So yeah, we launched a betting company, not a sports company that happens to do a few minutes a day on betting. And we're trying to deliver more directly and specifically to what the consumer wants.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Doug. Well, not only have you been around in the sports media industry for a long time, but you started off as a Sports Center anchor, I think. And again, I may be wrong on that front, but I believe so. So what's your path been like in not just sports betting, but again, sports media? I always find that intriguing. And I think our listeners that haven't had a chance to hear you yet will as well.
Yeah, so I started out in sort of the conventional way, right? I was an econ major, but I always wanted to do some form of journalism, but specifically broadcasting. So even in high school, I grew up in LA. I was a paid stringer, they're called, for the LA Daily News, where I would go to high school games and call in a story at deadline and things like that. And they had a big high school section. And I was also sports editor in my paper and things like that. And then I got to college, I did radio. And then eventually after college, I started out in the conventional path, like I mentioned, it's kind of like minor league baseball, right? You start off in single A, double A, and triple A, and you work your way up. And that's what I did. I started out in Columbia, Missouri, went to Quad Cities, Iowa. Anyone who's ever seen Tommy Boy, they know about Davenport, Iowa. You got to get yourself another map. And so I was in that area, and then for 4 years, and then I did Vegas for 7. So I was a local sports anchor here in town. And that was before the Golden Knights, before the Aces, before anything. It was like literally UFC, and that's about it. So I made betting the home team. Like, I covered sports betting on a daily basis. I interviewed odds makers. I interviewed pro bettors. I did a daily pick on the show every night. I sometimes did bad beats. I did, we're talking about so much about the Steelers, Patriots over under. Like, I would do storylines like that resonated, right? Not to the level where it is now. But if there was a noteworthy story or a noteworthy bad beat on a game that was high profile, I would mention it because, again, it was legal and it was local sports. So I would have topic bars about bad beats and things like that. So I was doing this in like 2005 to 2012, and I was doing a pick of the night. And then I launched a betting show with a couple guys who now work at VSiN. So we did that at midnight. And it's funny, the current project I'm doing, the current venture, is very similar to that in terms of taping at night, posting to the website, and doing things along those lines. And then we ended up getting bought out and doing ESPN Drive Time Radio in Vegas. And then I got the call from ESPN. So I went to ESPN, was a conventional sports center anchor, and sort of put aside my betting path and did radio, did game day radio, did sports center, did baseball tonight, did all this stuff. I was in the ecosystem of ESPN. And then once legalization happened, and then I was able to pivot and sort of merge all my worlds and do betting content at ESPN. And it just made a ton of sense. I had all the training, wonderful producers, all that good stuff. And I was able to kind of incorporate it and launch Daily Wager and do everything along those lines.
Yeah, and one of the instrumental people, really, when it comes to sports betting media, especially when you consider how long you've been doing this, man. And taking a look now at the NFL odds board, not necessarily week 14 odds to start, but looking at MVP odds, you've been doing a lot of video work on your site. Taking a look at Brock Purdy, especially when his odds were all over the place over the last week, but now he seems to be the consensus favorite. There are some books that have Purdy and Prescott both with the shortest odds to win NFL MVP. Hurts right behind them, then Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. So what do you make of this race, especially the way it's come to be over the last few weeks?
So I think right now is when you really got to kind of pull on some threads. It's very unlikely a long shot wins from this point forward. I think Tyreek Hill and McCaffrey around that 16-1 range is about as low as it'll go. I don't think CJ Stroud's going to come and make a late surge, kind of like we've seen sometimes with Heisman's. So right now it's important to just understand that these are fake markets. This is not Super Bowl champ index. It's just not. The odds, this is more like the draft, where you see a guy who's minus 500 and then becomes plus 300 in a moment's notice. It's a fickle market. So what does move the needle, as fickle as it is? It's wins and losses for quarterbacks. So you're looking at the board, and Dak, I understand the momentum for sure, but look who he has the rest of the way. There's 5 games remaining, and like 4 of them are tough. And when you factor that in, let's say they win this week. I think he's going to become the favorite after this weekend. And so they win, and then he's got some brutal games coming up, right? And you just wonder, is it sustainable? And I think that's where people need to be smart about this. You're not trying to just beat next week's price. If that's all you're trying to do, to buy this week and then sell on a yes, no or something, then fine. Bet Prescott if you think he's going to win. But I don't think that's what everyone's going for. I think we're all trying to figure out who's going to win and what ticket can you cash. So when you look at the Cowboys record after this week, a home game against the Eagles, right? They're at the Bills, at the Dolphins. Are they going to win both? And then home to the Lions on Christmas, which will be an island game, or Christmas weekend or whatever it is. So, I mean, he can go 4-1 the rest of the way. So it doesn't have to be a money line parlay, but you have to think about the money line parlay of the remaining games. And that's why I don't think there's any value on Dak. I think there'll be value on Purdy next week, but there's a chance Dak plays really well. They lose a nail biter. It's not as binary as I'm making it out to be, but I would not bet Purdy this week. I would wait, consider it next week. I did bet Tyreek yesterday at 20-1. I found a rogue number, and I'm on an island thinking McCaffrey has a shot. Some people I really respect thinks he doesn't. He has a shot to get some votes, take some away from Purdy, things like that. It's shaping up in my eyes to be a non-quarterback year, or at least a unique year where a guy like Purdy can win. Not that Purdy's not good. It's just is he really the reason they have the record? I don't. But the key is the other quarterbacks that are of the top seeds are not putting up gaudy statistics. So it's really an unusual year that Jalen Hurts' stats are okay. Mahomes has 4 losses, but he's obviously most valuable than anyone. But I think it's shaping up to where, I think if Tyreek gets the record with 2,000, it's okay, he could do this because Miami has 4 of their final 5 games at home. And, one of those is the Cowboys. The road game is Baltimore. But you want those high-profile games. It probably comes down to that Monday nighter with the Niners at home against the Ravens. San Fran will be about a 5-point favorite. If Purdy plays really well, he'll win. If he doesn't and Dak plays well, there's a few games left. But I think you just have to be really careful thinking this through. But I think primetime matters more than people realize. A couple years ago, Collinsworth raved about Aaron Rodgers against the Titans in a snow game. Titans had no idea what was going on, and they're slipping and sliding everywhere. And it was a Sunday night game, and he basically influenced the world. Like anything, no one wants to look like a dummy, okay? So when you go back to the College Football Playoff Committee, there's a confirmation bias involved in all this. But think about it. The committee members, who do they feel safer with? Who do they feel more comfortable saying it should go to the playoffs? It's Alabama, right? They don't want to look stupid and see Florida State out there in a month, even though they're more deserving or whatever, see them get boat raced and they'll feel stupid. So no one wants to be made fun of. No one wants to be mocked. It's a very public voting forum. So people want to feel comfortable. So if they see a guy like Collinsworth saying, do X, Y, and Z, oh yeah. So these high profile games, and the Purdy momentum is certainly gaining steam. So that's part of this, because there are a lot of voters who really don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, this is maybe the biggest referendum we've ever had on a non-quarterback winning. I feel like if one can't win this year, then one will never win, to be honest. So I'm with you in general, I guess, the way you're looking at it. Looking at some of this week's games, I definitely have an opinion on this Rams-Ravens matchup. It is a pretty big one as far as playoff picture goes. Obviously, Ravens pretty much in there. Rams looking to slide in there. I like the Rams. There's been a lot of tug of war around 7 with this number. So what do you think of that movement? And is there a number you like on this one?
There's a lot of betting trends out there, and sometimes they kind of just are just there to there. But I think there's something to this one with the Ravens, 1-8 against the spread in their last 9 games when favored by at least a touchdown. Now, obviously, in our world, we recognize the difference between 7 and 7.5. You mentioned the tug of war. But just the concept of what this says is all right, Ravens play down to their opponents. Yeah, that feels right. That definitely resonates because they kind of do, right? The Colts game earlier this year where they lost outright was a total sandwich spot. I get it. The Arizona game where they didn't cover was a backdoor cover. They were taking care of business. So there's a path here where they do take care of business. They're off the bye. Historically, they haven't been that great off a bye. So these are all sort of little spices you can put in when you try to figure out the sauce. I would take the Rams or pass. probably would tease the Ravens. It's just, frankly, Lamar has not played more than 12 games each of the past 2 seasons. And now we are through 12 games. They are the 1 seed, tied with Miami. I believe in the Ravens in the regular season to a certain extent. I think they're more balanced, especially with the rushing attack, but Lamar is not as dynamic as he once was, like peak, MVP season. I would not be surprised if they cover. So I really try to pick my spots and not bet a lot of games. Like I'm not doing these $1 parlays like I was mentioning earlier, where there are these lottery tickets, right? Where, these companies push all these parlays, but they can sleep at night because they know they're only selling like $1 lottery tickets or whatever. So it's not like they're, peddling drugs and crack and meth on the streets. If I'm going to get involved in the game, I'm going to bet, 99 times out of 100, I'm going to bet straight bet. Ravens, let's put it this way. Rams definitely in a pick'em league. I would probably bet the Rams at 7.5. I'd probably bet them at 7.5.
Yeah, I'm into the Rams, but I do definitely see some scenarios where it could get out of hand if the pass rush for the Ravens is getting home, because we have seen Stafford crumble in these spots before. But at the same time, their pass rushing numbers aren't that good this year, surprisingly, with how good the defense has been. Different one.
Well, the Rams are one of the biggest surprises this year, so it's taken us a while to get to that point with the Rams, right?
Yeah, and of
seeing them the right way.
I feel like their offense is definitely clicking the last few weeks in a way that it really wasn't before, even when they were having some good games. So I think we're seeing kind of a peak version of this Rams team, and a team that's not.
They've also won 3 in a row, so you got to be careful.
Yeah,
with the spot play too,
for sure. And speaking of teams that have been on a roll, one team that's definitely on a roll right now against the spread is the Bears, and Eli is riding the high there this week. So I was kind of not a fan, but the market is definitely with him. So did you have any thoughts on that one? I don't know, man. The weather is going to be rough, though, so this to me might be just a stay away. But at the same time, that could favor the Bears.
Well, the weather being rough is the reason I'm on the Bears. I think Jared Goff, we talk about trends and things like that. It's inarguable how bad he is in bad weather. We saw Week 18 last year, the Sunday night game where the Packers had to win to go to the playoffs. Like Goff, they were doing anything but letting Goff throw downfield. And he was terrible. He's throwing behind receivers. So in really cold weather, he's horrendous. In sloppy weather, he's shaky. Now, I'm not talking about going to LA and playing in that kind of weather or a dome game last week in New Orleans. Outdoor, cold weather. The reason I was kind of interested in golf, the Lions this year is because they didn't have a ton of sort of late December cold weather games, but he is a giant weakness in those situations. So I'm Bears and I'm under in this game. I can't stress enough how different Goff is in this type of environment. And you're right. Like, you should be getting more points with the Bears, but they were banged up a large part of the season. And the Lions, I used this word last week going into last week. They're not really like a mature team. Teams like Philly, usually Kansas City, play with success well. So off a couple wins in a row, like they know how to handle their business and get the win. And they finish 13-4 and things like that. This Lions team has laid some eggs this year, right? Thanksgiving, the week before almost losing to the Bears. Week 2, off the big road win at Arrowhead, they lay an egg at home to Seattle. So they're just not a team that's professional, polished, mature, whatever you want to do. But off a loss, they're really good. They actually have won 5 or 6 straight, won and covered after an outright loss. So, okay, so you rattle their cage. They're like, okay, we need to focus now. And then they take care of business. So last week was a really good time to bet on them. Off a win, I'm not in a rush to bet on them. I think they need a little bit more seasoning and experience kind of handling success to cover numbers, especially as a road favorite.
Yeah, I'm with you, Doug. On top of Stafford in poor conditions and this pass defense ranking well below league average and then some, the schedule, too, doesn't really lend itself to and not that the Bears are any sort of upper echelon opponent, but they haven't impressed from a schedule standpoint. Their one, I guess, quote unquote, elite win came against the Chiefs, and that was also kind of gifted to them with the ball going off of Tony's hands and resulting in a Lions pick 6 on opening night. So with you on the Bears getting a key number, and another NFC North team on the flip side of that laying a key number against the team in the town that you're at, the Raiders. So it's Vikings and Raiders on late Sunday afternoon, or I guess in the afternoon, depending on where you're at, and you being on the West Coast. How are you evaluating this game?
Yeah, I mean, Vikings got the early money. So this line was 2.5. A sharp betting group bet it early, moved it to 3. I'm not in a rush to bet on Josh Dobbs here. I mean, great story, all that. But, let's face it, we've seen him struggle like we did on Monday night against the Bears. And I think somewhere in between that and the previous week's performance is where Dobbs is. So laying chalk on the road, especially the full 3, not in a rush. But this Raiders team's shaky. Yes, Antonio Pierce has injected some life, and the coach that they hated is gone. But that doesn't mean they're all of a sudden like a playoff quality team, blah, blah, blah. They've gone under their team total in all but one game. So the offense has issues. Aiden O'Connell's still a rookie. Yes, he has some weapons here and there, but they're just limited across the board. If I had to play this like in a pick'em league, I would probably take the 3 points, even though I know sharp money came in on -2.5. But I can't bet this. I can't step up to the window and bet this.
And just to wrap it up, Doug, among the two, I guess, upper echelon games with Sunday Night Football, Cowboys and Eagles, and obviously Bills, Chiefs, both around a key number. I guess Bills, Chiefs getting bet down from 3 all the way down to Kansas City -1.5, as it was at 3 earlier in the week, or maybe late Sunday night. But any takes or bets on either of those games, or are you staying away?
This Chiefs team has issues. We've seen some Mahomes pull the rabbit out of the hat, but they're definitely just I feel like they've lost sort of that bounce in their step. Now, the Bills, to an nth degree, have done something similar. They just shoot themselves in the foot, right? I don't know how they lost the Patriots this year, let alone the week 1 against the Jets where Allen had all the turnovers, and even the overtime game with the Eagles. They had that game in the bag too. So this is not a team I want to back on the road against Mahomes, only catching 1.5, but I think they're the better team, as crazy as that sounds. But the Chiefs you have to give them credit for winning those games because the Bills haven't. So I actually would look at the over. I think they're going to let it go a little bit. I don't think the Chiefs like the defensive thing, but they've been getting into some low scoring games, and I don't think they're in a rush to do that anymore. I think they're going to let Mahomes cook, so to speak. And the Bills obviously have a limited defense at times, and I think we're going to see some points. So even in the year of 2023, I'm going to actually bet an over.
And you could find the best of the number, of course, over at thelines.com price shop. I think we're looking at 48.5 right now. There are some 49s, but 48.5 is the best number if you're looking about the over with Doug. And one of my favorite analysts around, man. Really appreciate the time. Doug Kezirian, at Doug Kezirian on X, Twitter, founder of onlyplayers.com. Excellent handicap of the NFL Week 14 card, along with really deep dive on the NFL MVP race. So really appreciate the time today, Doug.
All right. Thanks, Eli. I appreciate it, man. That was really nice of you to say all those things. And, thanks for having me on.
So that's going to do it for this edition of Beat the Closing Number. Big thanks to Doug Kezirian for hopping on. And Mo, any last words before we get out of here?
Not really. I just really hope the Chiefs can bounce back in this spot against the Bills. That's one game we didn't really talk about, but if they have any hope for the 1 seed, they probably need this one. But hey, even if the Chiefs lose, I can stop hearing people complain about Mahomes not ever playing on the road in the playoffs.
There's the Chiefs fandom. It would kind of circling back to the beginning of the podcast. But any look towards the over? Are you going to hop on with Doug at a total of 48.5 with
I think
two
it's
high-scoring offenses?
Yeah, it's definitely, the number's been moving up a little bit, I think. I think it was maybe 47.5 earlier in the week. And when I was looking over the weather, surprisingly, compared to a lot of the Midwest and the East Coast this week, I think it was super calm and good for offense. So I would guess that there could be some points here and would lean that way on the total, yeah.
If Mo does add anything with Chiefs Bills, be sure to check out those bets in the Lines Discord channel. The link is over at thelines.com in the top right-hand corner. And be sure, if you haven't signed up with BetMGM Sportsbook and are looking to take advantage of our promo code, The Lines, first-time users get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet loses. That's promo code one word. Remember that bonus bets are not equivalent to real money. And as always, terms and conditions apply. If you haven't taken advantage of that, be sure to do so before you get down on your NFL Week 14 bets. And on that note, good luck with your wagers. Hopefully our bets go well this week, and we'll be probably chirping about some bad beats if the officiating continues like it has over the last couple weeks in the NFL. But for Mo, you can follow him at Nuwwarah, 2 W's. You can follow me at Eli Herskovich. Thanks for watching and listening to another edition of Beat the Closing Number. So long, everybody.